This is Unit 2, Intro to Theme, Lesson 1, Choosing Your Guiding Question. So the purpose of today's lesson is to go over what theme is, to look at how we're going to self-assess that we're talking about theme at the right level, and then you're going to choose your guiding question. This guiding question will be your practice theme for all of our workshops for the rest of the year. Your challenge will be to try to apply it to every text you read or every text that we study together. So the idea is by carrying the same question forward throughout the whole semester, you'll be able to discuss it in greater depth and with more nuance and more precision. Okay, let's jump in. So this is the definition of theme that we looked at briefly in the first unit. A theme is the idea or belief that the text suggests is true and important about human nature. Other ways that you might have heard theme defined before are it's the big ideas of the text, it's the underlying message from the author, it's a universal truth implied by the text, or a universal idea, truth, or lesson. Now, I don't love these definitions for two reasons. First of all, I think it's misleading to say that theme is universal. Thematic concepts are universal. So there's these big topics that touch on all human lives in some form or another. So things like love, revenge, forgiveness, judgment. Those are universal. But when we're talking about theme in Alberta, in Canada, we're talking really about thematic statements, which are the beliefs and the ideas about these thematic concepts that we're trying to find in the texts. So the idea that human judgment is imperfect, that is something that is true and important about human nature, but it's not necessarily universal. That's not necessarily the idea about judgment that you would get from every story. So it sounds like I'm nitpicking, but I think it's helpful. Thematic statements are that's what our job is in critical analysis. That's what we're trying to analyze stories in order to discover. The other reason that I don't like these definitions of theme is that there's kind of this implication sometimes that the author has hidden the theme into the text and it's the reader's job to go and dig it up. Kind of like there's buried treasure and there's no map. You just have to go and dig everywhere until you can find it. I think that this perception is the reason why a lot of people who find high school English very frustrating. Because it makes it feel like, there's one right answer and you basically have to guess it. When in reality, the author's intentions are only part of the equation. Your reader response, your critical thinking, is at least equally important in making meaning out of the text. The author, their job is to create the text, and they probably have a theme or some other kind of controlling idea in mind. But once they've published it, once it's done, it's out of their hands. It's up to you, the reader, to make meaning from the text. It's up to you to decide what is important and true and worth thinking about. It's that interaction between reader and text that makes us study the same texts over and over again. Every time there's a new reader, there's a new theme. So, when it comes to the critical analysis of literature, the most important thing is that you're going to develop your own judgment, your own ability to interpret the texts. So I'd like to look at these two documents from your curriculum. On the left, we have the outcomes that are related to close reading that we want to master by the end of this year. When you read them in order, it seems like a step-by-step process. You're starting with a lot of hypothetical interpretations. You start with tentative understandings, and then you assess the potential of those understandings. by connecting your own and others' experiences, exploring additional aspects of the text, and responding to texts. So right from the beginning, this idea that you are in charge of deciding if it's a good idea, you're doing that right at the beginning when it's just a tentative understanding. And then once you've decided which ideas are kind of worth following, then you clarify those interpretations by testing them back against the against the text. So by referring back to the text for supporting or contradictory evidence, and then continuing to assess your understandings and interpretations against your new understandings as it develops. And then finally, putting it all together so that you can kind of complete the analysis. So look, the word assessing is in every single part of this. It's really related to your own ability to judge your interpretations. So the following lessons in this unit will have you work through these steps with one of the short stories that you chose on Monday. What you should be doing is paying attention to how much you trust your own judgment. How confident you feel in assessing at each of these steps of the process. And then related to that is if you can tell how strong your ideas are. This chart is from the Critical Analytical Response to Text rubric. This is the first category of the rubric for your summative essays. Can you tell when your ideas are insightful, carefully considered, when they demonstrate a comprehension of the subtle distinctions in the text and the topic? Can you tell when your interpretations are perceptive and illuminating? If you know what that feels like, you're more likely to keep working at your close reading process until you get to that point. The proficient level for grade 11 is we're looking for ideas that are thoughtful and considered, demonstrating a competent comprehension of the text and the topic. We're looking for literary interpretations that are revealing and sensible. A lot of us stop here at this satisfactory level, where the ideas are relevant, straightforward. They demonstrate a generalized comprehension of the text and the topic, and the literary interpretations are general but plausible. So the way it kind of feels in my mind is that satisfactory feels like, that's true, that's accurate, but okay. Proficient feels more like it's more of a complete understanding of the text, a more complete understanding of the topic. And excellent, it feels like there's light bulbs going off. It feels like the ideas are original and interesting and nuanced and sophisticated. And I really do believe that everyone can get to this level. Okay. So, like we said in the objective slide for this lesson, this year you're going to choose a thematic guiding question that you're going to practice applying to every single text that we read. So, you're going to get 2 choices, and for each choice I'm going to flip it so that you can hear it phrased in 2 different ways. And I'm going to give examples of more specific questions that you might be able to use to focus the topic for different texts. So the idea here is that you choose the one that seems the most interesting. You choose the one that seems like the philosophical or existential questions that you would like to have answered about your own life and your own choices. So option A. How is a person's ability to make free choices affected by their relationships with other people? To flip it. How do relationships with other people affect a person's ability to make free choices? So this brings up like the subtopics, the more focused questions. What do we value in our relationships? What drives us to form these bonds? What happens when different loyalties are in conflict? What relationships are defined by power dynamics or prescribed roles? What relationships are defined by love? What are the rules of belonging to certain groups? And what happens in those groups when the rules are not respected? What freedoms does a person have to sacrifice in order to maintain their relationships? Option B. How is a person's ability to make free choices affected by the way they see themselves? We flip it. How does the way a person sees themselves affect their ability to make free choices? So this begs the question, do we have a true self? How accurate are our understandings of ourselves? What interferes with true self-knowledge? Where does our self-concept come from? How is it informed by the way other people see us? How does a person's sense of their importance affect how they choose to treat others? What aspects of a person's self-concept have effects on the choices they make? What beliefs or feelings towards the self are harmful or limiting or even dangerous? What beliefs or feelings towards the self are healthy, empowering, or sane? So your task today is to reflect on the theme questions. Go back to the slides and look at the sub-questions once you've made your choice. Reread the guiding questions for the theme that you've chosen. Set a timer for the amount of time that you would like to spend doing some exploratory writing. And then choose one method to just kind of brainstorm. Dump all of your ideas down onto a page with one of these methods. You don't have to share it with me, but this is a good way of preparing yourself to identify the text in identify these thematic ideas in different texts. It's a way of kind of positioning yourself with the text with the theme before you try to apply it to texts. And then the reflection is just a couple of questions, and that's going to be your completion check for this lesson.